how it happened in the virtualization domain, virtualization software, how they are doing it. The outline of today's discussion is machine migration, high availability, and fault tolerance. What is a machine migration? Means, we know virtual machines, when they fail, the other virtual machine is going to use it or work on it. If one server fails, then we are talking about high availability of 99.9%. There is no data loss. All these things, how they are doing it means, in the company, like for VMware, they have 5 ways to migrate. And they are doing it based on one of these migration technique, and depending on what user wants from this migration. Like if they want certain kind of migration, then the cold migration is needed. If they want certain kind of migration, then suspended. So depending on what is their business need or what is their scenario, like whether they want to have V2V migration. So we will know about this migration. And so what does migration means? Migration means is a technique of moving a virtual machine from one host to another host. That means when we talk about host, that means it is a server, a physical server on which the VM is running. And from one physical server, the virtual machine is getting migrated to another virtual machine. As we saw, availability skill set or availability zone, where the task can be migrated if there is a failure, etc. So this usually when also the load balancing happen, when the load balancing is done, how they are migrating one VM to another host to another host. So this migration can happen between a host to host or between a data store to data store. So it is not a database, it is a data store. And in data store is basically all the virtual machine files are kept, the log files of virtual machine, the virtual disk, and also the ISO image. So in a data store is a combination of all. Either it can have virtual machine file or everything can be there. So migration is a technique where a VM is migrating from one host to other, or if they are migrating a data store, let's say a storage failure is there, and they want fault tolerance for the storage also, then you need to migrate data store to another data store as well. So that is those two kind of migration requirement the companies have to migrate a VM from one host to other, or migrate a data store from one data store to another data store. There are two types of data stores are there. One is a virtual machine file system, other one is a network file system. So as per the migration, so it is actually having in the virtualization server, this kind of migration is happening. So when you are doing this availability set, zone, or high availability, or fault tolerance, or failure, anything, so in the background, this kind of migration are being there, which is helping the cloud server to give that kind of services. So first is the cold migration. So what do you think a cold migration means? The server has to be put in the fridge and made it cold, and then it should be migrated. Not really. Cold migration doesn't mean that I will put the hardware into the fridge and make it cold, and then we migrate it. So let's see what the cold migration means. So the cold migration means the movement of virtual machines. So let's say one VM is, they want to migrate one VM to other VM. There is a failure there in the host, and that VM need to be migrated, or for any reason. So in that case, the movement from one virtual machine to another host will be in the power off state. That means the virtual machine which we want to migrate will be made power off. That means it is non-functional, non-working. And in the powered off state, the migration is happening. So in power off state, migration is very stable, and almost no failure happen when we are doing the cold migration. But we have to think that when we are switching off and migrating a VM, whatever task it has to another VM, then there is a time lag is there. So cold migration can be used to move a virtual machine between a data center. That means from one data center. So in a one data center, there can be many server or can be many hosts. And when we are migrating from one data center, let's say we choose an availability zone or region pair from, let's say, US to EU. And if you want to, and the VM had a failure here, and we want to migrate the VM to another data center in a EU from US. So in this scenario, the cold migration will happen. And that time, the VM will be in a power off state, non-functional. And then the migration will happen. Then VM will be moved between the data center. And as long as both the data centers are on the same vCenter server instances, that means if you want to migrate the VM from one data center to another data center, then both the data centers should be connected to the same vCenter server. In the last lecture, we saw what is a vCenter server. vCenter server manages many vCenter, and so they manages many hosts. So in that case, when they are connected to the same vCenter server, then only the cold migration can happen. The chances of failure is obviously very less in comparison to hot migration. So hot migration doesn't mean that we heat up the server and migrate it. The cold migration doesn't mean that we freeze the server and migrate it. Cold migration means that it is in a power off state. And hot migration means that the virtual machine is in a power on state. And that time we are doing the migration. Most of the scenario, the cold migration is helpful when the business requirement can sustain the time during which the migration is happening. There is a delay of few minutes will be there, and it can take certain minutes. How many of you are affected with when coming to the cold migration? How many of you are affected with the WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook the not availability last week? So any reason why it happened? No, I'm not affected because I don't use WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram. So I am one of those people who are not affected with this snag. But many people, at least 3.5 billion people were affected for 6 hours, that their primary reason of communication was not working. Even my mother was affected because she cannot talk to her relatives, because my mom is 70 years old, and the maximum time she is actually gossiping with her relatives in the different places. Yeah, so the primary reason of the failure was that remember DNS, we were knowing that's domain name system, right? So the servers, the BGP, the protocol. So the domain name system is actually by which the internet knows where is your server, right? And the data center where this Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, they are being kept. So there is a route they manages, means this data will be taken care with this data center and this host. So the routing protocol, they had some configuration change, but many people saying that there was an attack by malicious insider, that there was an attack by the malicious insider or a hacker, which actually corrupted their routing protocol, and due to which the first thing what Facebook did, they cut off their server from internet because they don't know what happened. So the first thing they did, that they did physical cutoff of their server of the data center, because they wanted to protect the people's data. Because when something doesn't work, you don't know what it is. The first instant that cordon off the area and then find out what is. And The similar thing which you have seen, if you have seen the Money Heist, the famous Money Heist Spanish web series in Netflix, that anything happened, they cordon off. So that is what they did. And practically what was the reason that the routing system, which has the information of different IP address, that got some misconfiguration, and you can imagine that created a loss of few $1 billion to Mark Zuckerberg. And all these things we are learning in this course, that why something is happening and etc. And that can happen for any kind of thing. Like migration technique has a configuration issue. The cloud engineer did something, some update, and it has some error was not checked. So it's good that you all are aware what happened and you can relate to this course, the domain name system, the IP addresses, the BGP protocol, and also the CDN, content delivery network. So let's come back to our cloud migration. So the cold migration, when it is a power off state and the VMs are migrating between one data center to other data center, and both the data center has to be in the vCenter server. So all this technique which we are talking is related to VMware software, but most of the virtualization software has more or less similar things are there. Here they are using vCenter server, they may be using some other thing, but conceptually things will be the similar thing. Now the next is a suspended migration. So when the virtual machines are migrated in the suspended state, that means all the activity happening in the virtual machine, a pause has been kept. It is a pause state. That means every activity of VM has been paused. It is not power off, but whatever activity was happening, it just made it in the pause state. And so that we can resume from the same point at the later stage. And suspended, and there is a vMotion migration, which is a VMware, the most famous migration technique, are considered the hot migration, because in both the cases, the VMs are running. In a vMotion, it happens not in a pause state. In that kind of condition, it is in the running state. Means when the VM is running, you are migrating the VM in a running state, all the activity to all the big migration you are doing it. So it is a amazing vMotion is there. We will see in the next slide. So we are migrating the content of the VM. You are right. Okay, but they call it a VM migration. Okay. We are migrating all the content and whatever execution, what is the state, everything to the other data center, not the VM. We do not migrate the VM, but we migrate the same state, same configuration to the other one. Later on, we will see how they are doing it. Okay, it's a good question. But they call it a migration. So suspended migration is often done to actually find a technical problem. You know, when a technical, yes, a snapshot, you can say that a snapshot is taken of a particular state, whatever is happening, and that should be migrated. Not the VM is not migrating, the whatever condition the VM had, the image of the VM and as well as the log file and everything will be migrated related to it. So suspended migration is done primarily for troubleshooting. Means if there is some VM is having a fault, right? Some technical issues happening, and that virtual machine is either not behaving properly, or some, let's say you are hosting some web app or some software on some VM, and a particular kind of VM is happening, getting some kind of technical snag. Then that time to troubleshoot, the suspended migration is done. Like we suspend that VM at that instant and move the content and everything, the whole snapshot to another VM, and try to find out what is the fault there. So that is the suspended migration. It is mostly done for troubleshooting, finding out the fault which is happening, because VMs are running in a particular host, and that host is basically mean a physical server with all the hardwares and everything. It may be that there is a hardware issue or there is a software issue. So to find out, this suspended migration is used basically for technical team to migrate the thing and do the finding out what problem is there in another VM server. The third one is a vMotion. vMotion is one of the very good migration services by the VMware software, and it is so strong that you are actually migrating the VM from one host to another host, and the downtime is only 2 milliseconds. Imagine when we are walking or running, at some point our body is in the air. Both the feet is not on the floor. We, even as a human, when we are walking for few milliseconds, our body is in the air. And that is what we are migrating a VM from host in the US to a host in the Europe, right? They are in the different center, and the downtime is only 2 milliseconds. That is amazing, and that is quite a need of that is making them win a lot of deal in the market because of this vMotion, and they have really worked very hard to get this vMotion, and this is called live migration. So for vMotion services, the migration is in a power on state. That means VM is whatever execution happening or anything happening on the VM is not aware that it is getting migrated. So, and in the VMware, vMotion migrated from one EXI host to another in a power on stage, whereas the storage vMotion machine migrated from one data store to another data store, both in the power on state. That means both the VM migration as well as the data store migration from one host to another host happen. And while the execution is going on, that means it's a power on state, all the machines are in a running state there. But there is a condition that the host should be in the same cluster. Okay, that all the EXI hosts should be in the same cluster, not in the different cluster. So how it done? That they make first connection, and then during the connection, they start migrating it, and when the moment they clean the connection, that is 2 millisecond time, and that is the downtime they get. That when they are disconnecting the connection towards the end of the migration. So that is what the downtime has for vMotion. So this is an amazing feature by VMware. Let's go to the fourth migration technique, which is a P2V migration, means physical computer to virtual one. That means you had shown the case study where branch office want to migrate to the cloud, and while the main office is in the cloud. So that time this P2V migration can be used, where everything from a physical computer is migrating to a virtual one. Like example is that we have a web server running on a physical hardware, and we can run this VMware vCenter converter and target the web sphere and have a copy of the physical server created on the EXI host. So this VMware vCenter or EXI host is created on the cloud, and we can use this VMware vCenter converter to really migrate the web server which is in a physical computer, which is not on the virtualized one, to migrate on the virtual server using on a EXI host. So this will help the company not stop the execution, and during everything running, they can migrate to the cloud. Other one is the V2V migration, which is basically from one virtual machine hosted, let's say in a Microsoft Azure, and you want to migrate it to the VMware virtual server. So in that service also available by the VMware, that if someone wants to migrate from Microsoft Hyper-V is a hypervisor in a Microsoft, or AWS, Amazon Web Services, and you want to migrate to the VMware. So this V2V migration also is given by the VMware, that you don't have to stop. So migrating from Hyper-V and VMware Workstation to EXI host. EXI is a service software